welcome to NWA Cane Corsos podcast, where we talk all things dogs.
I'm the real champion. There'll never be one like me.
Welcome back to the show, NWA Cane Corsos, where we talk absolutely everything dogs. Vito's in the house and Alexander's in the house. If you've been around us long enough, you know that Alexander has put some legendary dog breeding talks, thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of views across the internet. So we all know and love him for that. And then on the other side of him, we got the living legend, Vito Alou, American Bulldog expert, breeder expert, joined the Samba Kennels. So he's still in it. When you think they're getting out, they just go deeper. They go back and get them. So he's a Midwest Samba Kennels representative. So fellas, it's good to see both of y'all, and it's actually a blessing to have both of y'all at the same time on the NWA Cane Corso podcast.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And Vito, I had you in my show, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Me too. It was great. We're of the same era.
That's
I'm just
true.
a little older.
Generation X is in the house. No,
There we go. Generation
Actually,
X.
I think I'm the last year of a baby boomer because I was 1963, and I think 63 or 64 is the last year of baby boomers.
I'm not sure you're right. I think you're Generation X, but that's okay.
Who knows?
I'm right in the middle.
Yeah, there we go. Well, guys, we're here to talk about fixing issues in established breeds. It's a hot topic. It's happened more than once in history. So we're gonna deep dive into it. And the interesting thing here is, like I said on the onside of the show, Alexander has put some legendary videos down on breeding, tactics on breeding philosophy, everything, right? I think the last one we did was a 2-rail system, right? So we got that. Then we got Vito, who has actually bred a lot of dogs and different things, and did a lot of testing of hips and joints and all kind of stuff, and did like the American Bulldog, for instance. Like, didn't they have kind of a semi-recovery for us, like them bringing in some farm dogs at one point, or how do I explain that, Vito?
The whole, the premise was they were going to preserve this Southern Bulldog that they've had in the United States for 200-300 years, but it was they didn't have a bunch of dogs that they started with that had a history, that had pedigrees. Matter of fact, very few had pedigrees. They just went by the way they look and the way they work, and then the breed took two different angles. Basically, I mean, I don't have proof of it, but I think they're just basically an American Bulldog is a catch weight pit bull that, if you know anything about fighting pit bulls and breeders of fighting pit bulls, they test their dogs at like 9 months or a year. And if it's not a dog that has a certain level of gameness, they call it a cur, and they either give it away or they put it down. So I think the American Bulldogs, a bunch of curs that were given away, and then those people, ranchers and farmers and hog hunters, used them, and they may have added whatever they needed, and that's kind of what the breed was for years and years. And then in 1973, when they wrote a standard and set out to preserve the breed, like I said, they started pulling dogs out of the woods. When I got my first one in 1988, now looking back, I have a feeling the breed was still kind of a composite. I may have been breeding dogs that were like F2s. I don't know. We don't know because everybody lies. It's not written down. It's not documented. So it's
right. So we Alexander, they saying that they can hear that hum. I don't know.
I have audio. I can hear you.
No, it's a humming. They hear
a humming. Maybe it's my fan. Let me see.
Maybe so. Let's see if it's that fan. What's up, Bakari? What's happening, brother? DB, what's happening?
I think it's his computer.
Yeah, it might be the computer. Yeah, it sounds like a computer fan.
Podcast. I think I was his podcast. Noise, but I guess a little fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's off. There's an audio difference.
Well, we think
the fan is off now.
Yeah, we think it's your computer fan doing that.
Oh,
we hear it.
Yeah, really? My computer is in the same spot.
Right now it's okay.
Right now it's okay.
Right now we good.
Maybe I'll put something underneath it to make it.
I think we good, Alexander.
Yeah. All right.
So Alexander, when we got to fix breeds, it's usually and I'm learning every day. I don't have some strong points on some different things, but as I've been learning that it has been quite a few breeds that gets bottlenecked with mutations and different things, and then you have to outcross, right? So could you explain that system to us? What happens when what's going on with that?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I'll take a quick intro and then we'll pass it back to you and Vito. So first thing I want to explain is that I'm against mixing breeds. I think if you start mixing breeds, you're going to lose the heritage breeds. And breeds have been defined for a century or more. And for us to experiment by diluting the gene pool by constantly mixing in different breeds, eventually you'll have no breeds. You'll have what in India they call them the street dogs of India. They're basically nondescript dogs that don't require much food and can survive. And eventually all dogs will, if you let all the dogs out and you stop breeding purposefully and you stop breeding breeds, all breeds would eventually disappear. And all of a sudden you have a child lost in the woods and you need a German Shepherd to find a child lost in the woods, or you need a German Shepherd to find a cadaver. You wouldn't have one because no breed has been specially bred to have the nose and, more importantly, the intensity to search through hunting. Mm-hmm. If you stop purposeful breeding, you're not going to have herding breeds, which can herd sheep. Now, in the United States, nobody herds sheep since the 19th century. We have trains and people herd livestock through tractors and trains, and it's mechanized. But in Australia, they have a big economy tied to the wool market and tied to the sheep meat market. And in Mongolia, they have the meat is so cheap, it's cheaper than water, because they have camels, they have sheep, they have cows, and they rely on dogs to herd in Mongolia. So in some parts of the world which are not as mechanized as we are, the ability to have a dedicated purpose-bred herding dog matters to them. So in a sense, they're in the past in how they use dogs. So I'm an opponent of mixing breeds, and there are some people who crossbreed different breeds for different purposes. Some people feel, well, let's see what we get and see how it behaves. Some people feel, well, it's a performance breeding. If I'm, for example, in Holland and I'm operating the KNPD, the Royal Dutch Police Dog Sport, and have a Malinois and I cross it with a pit bull to create what's called a bull herder, I think I'm adding size and mass to the Malinois in order to make it a more powerful dog. And as long as the dog does the job, which is bite work on a man wearing a bite suit, then that dog is seen as adding to the gene pool. So it's basically open stud book. It's not a closed stud book. So they do what they call performance breeding. So there are two cases of people breeding outside blood of a different breed into an existing breed. And that's not outcrossing, that's outbreeding. Outcrossing is within your own breed. Outbreeding is breeding to a foreign breed, not your own breed. And so on general principles, I'm opposed to it. Now, in purebred dogs, which have existed for 120 years or more, like the Rottweiler, like the German Shepherd, like many, many breeds, they're 100 years, some breeds are 400 years old. Your genetic gene pool is exhausted, and you have a loss of what's called the AVK. That's a German word. It means the ancestry loss coefficient. What it means is that the COI, the coefficient of inbreeding, is the degree of relatedness between dogs. But the AVK is the opposite. It is the degree of unrelatedness in the dogs. So, for instance, let's say you have a pedigree of 100 dogs. 98 out of 100 are unrelated. 2 out of 100 are related. What's your AVK? 98%, 98 over 100. So the degree of unrelatedness is 2 out of 100. Degree of unrelatedness, in other words, 98 out of 100. So the AVK is basically a fraction. It measures the degree of lack of inbreeding, not the degree of inbreeding, but the exact opposite of inbreeding, how much genetic diversity you have in the breed. Now, there are three scales, 85% to 95%, healthy gene pool. 75% to 85%, still healthy, but time to be concerned. And below 60%, time to be worried that you're running out of complete copies of the gene. And some people say, well, why do I care about the breed at large? I only care about the dogs on my own yard. That's what I'm responsible for. That's my business, the dogs I physically own. Well, there's a very good reason to be concerned about the breed at large. Let's say you have a carrier of a disease. Let's say you're a collie owner, English collie, Lassie, and you have MDR1, which is a disease in collies. All of a sudden, that dog goes for anesthesia, and the act of just giving it anesthesia makes the dog die on the operating table. Or you give the dog ivermectin, which is a dewormer, very, very safe for centuries. And the dog dies because it got ivermectin. It's drug resistant. And so no matter what drug you give it, there's a chance the dog will die. That normally you give a dog a drug to solve a problem. Here, giving it the drug kills the dog. Now you say, well, my dogs don't have MDR1. Well, if they're a carrier for MDR1, you need to go to another breeder's yard to make sure his dogs don't have MDR1. In other words, you don't want to breed a carrier to another carrier. When your AVK goes down, your coefficient of relatedness goes down, your gene pool is exhausted. There is no other yard you can go to which is not a carrier. Everybody is a carrier. There's no more clears. So the reason you care about this as an individual breeder is that because while it doesn't affect the dogs in your particular yard, if it affects the gene pool of the dog breed as a whole, then you have no more clears to breed to. You box yourself in. An example of that is the von Willebrand's disease in the Doberman Pinscher. They're at the point now that there are a couple of clears still left, but very, very soon, unless they outcross to the Rottweiler or to the French Besseron, two of the founding breeds which made the breed, they're going to run out of genetic diversity.
So Alex, let me ask you this, and this is for Vito too. So, in what you were saying is, I was seeing that you were saying there's performance breeders, rescue breeders, and companion breeders,
and preservation breeders,
and preservation breeders. Okay,
right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But these are different techniques. So these are different things people breed for: to rescue a breed, for companion. All right. So with Vito, hearing what he said, I want you to respond to it. If you would.
Well, I think I talked to you like a year or two ago. You're like, hey, man, I need some ideas. So I started thinking about my experience in the first breed I really got into as a kid, and up until in my 30s, I was into Dobermans. And I knew they had cardiomyopathy was a big thing. I knew people whose dogs fell over dead just running in the park, and they didn't even know the dog was sick. And I hadn't Von Wildebrands was around, of course, back then, but I never seen anybody with it. But I get this dog. I bought a house in 1988, and I thought, oh, finally, I get my own dog. So I bought this Doberman. He was from the number 5 dog in the country, champion, Rainbow's Running Bear. He was like a 70s style dog. That's why I liked him. Anyway, I get this dog, Bravo. He's extremely smart. I trained him by 2. Or is it? Yeah, I think he was 2 years old, and I had him trained for AKC companion dog degree, the first level degree.
CD, yeah, that's not easy, by the way, the CD, yeah.
Which, when I got into it, all these little ladies would tell me, nah, you screwed up. You shouldn't have got a male Doberman. You need to get a girl. Or you need a Sheltie. You're never going to make it. And I made it. I went to one trial in Belleville, Illinois, and he wasn't, he was trained, but sometimes he wasn't perfect. And I wasn't a great trainer, but that day, for some reason, he did everything perfect. So I get this, and shortly after, right before he turned 2, I'm throwing the tennis ball down my hallway, and I see he's peeing. He's dripping pee. And of course, I get mad, and I tell him, get out. What are you doing? So I thought he just, didn't go pee when he outside. So then this kept coming up. And so finally I took him to a vet. The vet said, oh, it's submissive urinating. And I said, well, I know what that is. He's not submissive urinating. He doesn't even know he's peeing. And so I finally went to this lady, Cherry Hills Veterinary Clinic, like 40, almost 35, 38 years ago. And she did all these tests, and she said, I'm sorry to tell you, but your dog has diabetes insipidus. I'm like, what? She said, yeah, there's medicine for it. And I think it was like 1986 or something like that. And it was like $300 a month, which I could rent a 2-bedroom apartment for $350 back then.
Yeah, in 1986, I remember you could buy groceries for a family of 4 for $150 and a brand new Nissan Sentra.
Y'all was probably wearing, y'all was wearing Kangos. Y'all were wearing them kangaroos back then with the little kangaroo on the back.
A brand new car was $5,000. A Ford Taurus was $12,000.
Really, yeah.
Brand new, yeah.
Yeah.
Cadillac was like 18 grand.
Yeah,
but
Cadillac was 18 grand, and that was like the most expensive car you could buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got the medicine, and it didn't do any good anyway. And so she's like, we have to put him down. He's going to have kidney failure. And I said, put him down. He's a young dog, and he looks fine. He just pees. I have to confine him to a crate. And so he lived a year, but like if it rained, he'd dig a hole and drink. He would drink so much water, his stomach would fill up. So anyway, long story short, at 3 years of age, I had to take this dog in. I put so much time in, we loved him. And at that point, I was a pet owner. I wasn't a dog breeder. And it mentally fucked me up in the head. And that's when I started thinking, I don't ever want to have another AKC breed again. All these AKC breeds have all this weird shit wrong with them. And that's why I looked into rare breeds. I knew about American Bulldogs, but I was married, and I didn't think my ex-wife could handle a dog like that. Actually, she handled the American Bulldogs better than the Doberman. The Doberman wasn't bad. He would grab a kitchen towel off the handle of the oven and go underneath the dining room table and just shred it. Well, of course, that pissed her off. So she'd get underneath the table to go get it, and he'd wait till she gets close and then growl at her. But he was a wimp. He wouldn't do anything anyway, but that was enough to freak her out. Whereas American Bulldogs, she could club them over the head with a 2x4, and they're like, I love you. So,
oh man, you made my back hurt. You said that's funny.
So that traumatized the shit out of me. I knew there was a lot of trouble with American Bulldog or with Dobermans because, in the 80s, the number one dog was a dog called Kryptonite. He was a red Dobe, and he was owned by like 10 people, and they're all super wealthy people. This dog lived on a trailer of an 18-wheeler 365 days a year with a professional handler that went from AKC show to AKC show. They do that to set records in the working group. And he was setting records. Well, that dog had thyroid issues. He had all kinds of issues, which you think this is a specimen of the breed. He should be, he's this winningest Doberman. He should be the greatest thing on earth. And he's got all this stuff. I'm like, man. And at the time I didn't know why it is, but now I after so many years of being a breeder, Herr Louis Doberman was a dog catcher, blah, 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 that stuff in the 1800s. And they recognized the Doberman, and then he died at like 61. He died, I'm older than he is. And so Herr Louis Doberman only had he didn't breed Dobermans for 40 years or 20 years.
No,
30 years.
he didn't.
He crossed up a couple dogs and whatever worked is what he had. And then after he left, after he died, other people added stuff and refined the breed a lot more. Because the first Dobermans, they were rough looking, man. Mm-hmm. They had rough hair and they were a little more terrier looking, not as pretty. And they were supposed to be you had to be kind of courageous to own one because they were a hard dog. But things changed, in the 60s and 70s, they became this super popular dog. The general public thought they were land sharks, but all these wealthy breeder, show people, especially women. I hate to say women. I hate to sound sexist, but I'd go to shows. I was a kid. I'd go to these shows, and these people were breeding them as if they were Arabian horses. They wanted them very elegant, and of course, they don't want them to have any grit or anything. So they bred all that out of them. They're always sweet, and I'm sure there's always a level of protection to them. But so I think that's what happened with that breed is the gene pool was not that big and not that deep, and things took off, and I'm sure back in the old days, you could be more creative because, there was no DNA test and nobody's going to know if you do something. And that happened a lot in all kinds of breeds for different reasons.
Yeah.
They had a grand champion stud and he went sterile. And they had his kids or his brother, and they thought, "Oh, I'll just use this dog."
Right.
I'm not
right.
gonna.
Yeah.
Little shady stuff like that. It always happens.
It always happens, Vito. I've been covering these dogs. I don't care what dog. I know as a dog that entered in there somewhere in most of these, especially bull breeds. But so let me put this disclaimer because people think I'm picking on their breeds when we talk about certain things like this. If it's my dog Corso, we're gonna talk about the negative side, temperament, shepherd, whatever dog. This is an all breed podcast. Right. And I also want to mention that I'm about to get into the meat of this conversation, but there throughout history, it's not just been the Doberman that I've had to. I was reading that the boxer and the corgi was outcrossed because of the European ban on tail docking. Right. And they did that cross because of the tail. Then you have the Norwegian Lunduhund, right? The population dropped under 30 dogs. Extreme inbreeding caused near universal rates. And starting in 2012, genetics and the Norwegian Kennel Club launched an official managed cross program using closely related Nordics, Spitz, Buhan, Iceland sheepdogs. So this is not even a Saint Bernard. I see they had to do a rescue program on it. So this is not us picking on dogs. We're just talking about this history is repeating itself.
Right.
If
I can share. Oh, right. I'm sorry.
The English Mastiff after World War II was pretty much extinct. They resurrected the breed. Supposedly there was none in England and just a handful of them here in the United States. So they used what they call the Alpine Mastiff, the Saint Bernard, Great Dane, Bull Mastiff, and set out to save the breed. So it's been done, but it's not done
Same
very
thing
often.
with the Dutch Shepherd in Holland. It was rescued.
Yep.
I'd like to share a screen where it was
ahead.
done deliberately and sanctioned versus unsanctioned. See, there's two ways of rescuing a breed. One way is unsanctioned, meaning you cross some other blood into the breed because the numbers of the breed are so low, and it's so low numbers that you have no choice but to expand the gene pool. But it's done unsanctioned, meaning you fake pedigrees. You're saying this dog is actually an old Dutch Shepherd on the pedigree, but it was really a German Shepherd. Or you're saying a dog was really a Dutch Shepherd was really a Malinois, and you fake the names in the pedigree to make the dog look pure, but actually other breeds are being thrown in, and so that's the unsanctioned way of doing it. It works because eventually you refine the population to breed back to a common standard. But that's the unsanctioned way. There's also the sanctioned way, which the AKC allows it to happen. And I'd like to share that if that's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let me share the screen.
What's up, chat? Y'all hit the like button, share. Make sure you follow Vito, Samba Midwest on Instagram. Follow
I'm
Alex.
trying to figure out how to share the screen. Present.
Present. Yes, sir. Present.
Video.
And when I see it, I'll grab it.
Google Slides. Oh, your computer. Okay.
What's up, Jermaine?
Upload. I don't know. Just 1 second. I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Because video file, share screen. Oh, okay.
Yeah, present, share screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll be forgetting too.
Yeah, it's not easy because it's so many screens here. Okay.
Okay.
Can everybody see this screen?
Boom, I got it.
There's a disease called hyperleucosuria. I'm sorry if I'm mangling the name, guys, but this is the disease. It's a kidney disease.
I deal with it in American Bulldogs.
Yes, it's a disease
really?
Okay. It's a disease that appeared in the Dalmatian because something in making the spots caused this disease. And I'm going to close this screen. The links will be in the description of my channel if anybody wants to follow these links for reference. Can you guys see the UC Davis study?
No, present it, share it,
again.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to share as you go. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up a couple of slides real quick, and then I'm going to talk about them in more detail.
Okay.
Share screen.
We have that in Brazilian bulls too. HUU and the American. It probably comes from the American Bulldog. I don't know. But
we don't know. We don't know which.
We
comes
just
from
recently
what.
started having tests for it, and I almost have everything in my.
Okay, can you guys see this? National Library of Medicine.
I'm clear.
Inclusion of urate oxidase as a candidate for hyperglycemia in Dalmatian dog using interbred backcross. And this is an article. And there's a lot of other articles. I'm not going to bring them up because it would serve the same purpose. So basically, let me give you the story in a very quick verbal way. Am I back to full screen or am I still in sharing mode?
Yeah, we see you. You on the show. Yeah.
Not sure how the screen is because too many people on the screen. It's confusing me a little bit.
Yeah.
So basically, in 1973, the AKC put the word out that any, and I mean any, Dalmatian in the world that does not have this disease, come forth. We want your dog to outcross and make that dog a foundation dog to get a clean copy of that gene so that the other dogs in the breed will not have this disease. And so they had different gene populations. They had Dalmatians in France. They had Dalmatians in Germany. They had Dalmatians in every country. And you would think that by going to a different gene pool in a different country, you are now in the clear because it's a different gene pool in a different geographical location, right? Well, it turned out in 1973, the disease in the Dalmatian was so bad because the ABK was so low, the ancestry loss coefficient. I forgot what the German word means. It's ABK. I don't remember the German translation. In English, it means ancestry loss coefficient. The ABK was so low, no dog could be found, even though they put out like a $10,000 bounty to find such a dog. They couldn't find any. And so in 1980, 7 years later, there was a lot of debate inside the AKC. And what is a pure breed? It means you breed a pure to a pure. You don't breed a pure to some other breed, right? So people were against it. I mean, we're not going to allow another breed to enter our breed and call it pure. It's not pure. Well, that argument doesn't hold water. Let's sidestep with that first. First of all, let's say the popular mix, the poodle and Labrador mix, Labradoodle they call it. Well, the first mix is an F1 cross. It's 50-50 poodle, 50% Labrador. If I breed this 50-50 mix back to a Labrador, the next dog is 75% Labrador, 25% poodle. The next cross, the F3 cross, I breed to a Labrador again. Now it's 87.5% Labrador and 12.5% poodle. I do it F4. Now it's 93% Labrador, 7% poodle. And I do it one more, it's now a pure Labrador. So after 5 generations, the blood of the other breed disappears. It becomes statistically so small that by breeding back to the original breed in a F1 cross, in the F1 cross it's 50-50, but every time you breed to one of the two original breeds, you've diluted the blood. By the time you reach the 5th generation, the other breed you bred to has disappeared to the point where it's genetically insignificant. So past 5 generations, the pointer, which is who the Dalmatian was bred to, became invisible in terms of genetic markers. Now, they allow these in the 5th generation dogs to be registered as pure Dalmatians. After 5 generations, not after the F1 cross, after the F5 cross, right? And the gene pool reinvigorated, the disease was gone, and then a lot of dogs came from those initial dogs because they were expanding the gene pool, getting rid of the kidney disease. Because who wants to see a dog suffer from kidney disease? Well, by 2005, we're talking about 1973 to 2005, some purists of the breed came back and says, no, we want you to unregister all these dogs as pure Dalmatians. We don't agree with it. They're now 15 generations later. I'm on the phone, Lizachka. My daughter's calling me. She doesn't know I'm in the basement. I'm in the basement here. She doesn't know.
Yeah. And Alex, so what you're explaining is cleaning the blood. I just want to let the
I'm explaining cleaning the blood, but the problem is the genetics part of the argument. It's pretty obvious. You know, after 5 generations, the foreign blood of your breed is gone, but the gene has been spliced essentially to remove the bad mutation, or whatever you want to call it. Now, to put it into perspective, let's do it in human terms. 12 generations in human beings. And what's a generation? A generation is the age of maturity. 25 years old. So our life expectancy is 4 times the age of maturity. So 4 times 25 is 100. So our maximum life expectancy is 100. We don't necessarily live to 100, but that's our life expectancy. In a dog, in a horse, a 4-year-old is the age of adulthood. So the horse lives until 16. In a dog, the age of adulthood in large breeds is 2 years old. So a dog is supposed to live until 8. Anything else is a bonus. So in mammals, the rule of thumb is that the age of adulthood times 4 is the maximum life expectancy. So to put it in perspective, 12 generations of human beings, counting a generation as 25 years long, would take 300 years. That means 12 generations of human beings would go back to the 1700s. We would go back to the civil. We will go back not to the Civil War, which was 1865. We will go back to 1775, 250 years ago. We will go 50 years before that. We would go to 1725. So 12 generations in human beings would be from now until 1725, roughly. 300 years is 12 generations of human beings. Because dogs have a shorter life expectancy than human beings, 12 generations is For example, from 1989 to 2026, that's 12 generations in dogs.
Right.
So from 1989 to 2026, that's 12 generations. Now, these people fought these modified Dalmatians, which were 15 generations later, and wanted them removed from the AKC records. They did. They won the fight. All of a sudden, the disease came back, and all of a sudden, they had to reintroduce and register those dogs for the disease not to come back. So we're not talking about inbreeding at a local level. Let's say this guy does a Dalmatian cross, or let's say this guy does a Dutch Shepherd, German Shepherd cross. One breeder in a country of 350 million people. That doesn't make a difference. We're talking about large scale breed level changes, not at the individual breeder, but at scale. In other words, you need at least 50 dogs, at least 50, to make enough of an impact to change the breed as a whole.
So let me go to Vito with this. So we have several examples of purebred dogs have to be reconstructed or added in new blood at some point. Vito, being that you are in a genre of dogs where composite breeding, where you had the freedom, you didn't have the breed club, you ain't hearing none of that. Is that something you think y'all will ever run into? And being that y'all do have the freedom to add in the crosses how you like, and you are into a new breed, I hear this now. I hear when you cross dogs, the mutations it ain't the health that gets better. Is that true?
It doesn't get better. What happens is when you do an outcross, I'm not as technical as Alex. When you do an outcross, it throws all these genes up in the air. And Mother Nature, she's a typical woman. She wants to reorganize shit. She doesn't want. She likes diversity. She doesn't like, because that's the nature. In the wild, wolves, they're not going to inbreed for 6 generations. It's not going to happen. The males run off. They may get their third cousin in the next, pack and breed.
Right.
But the big difference is Mother Nature, that bitch is an absolute cull machine. She doesn't have to worry about selection, because if the dog's not smart enough or the wolf's not smart enough to survive, if he's not strong enough, if he doesn't cooperate, whatever the criteria is to live, it dies or it gets killed or it whatever. So, they used to always say only the strong survive. Well, it's not just the strong, it's the smart. It's the dog that is perfect pack order. It fits in the pack. It functions in the way that the dog has to function. And it's got the selection pressure is tough. And I think personally myself, of course, I haven't read this in a study. I don't even know if there is a study, but the problem with purebred dogs is we're not Mother Nature. We don't cull, like we should. Now, I'm not saying you have to kill your dogs. I'm saying
if
it's not a good dog, or if it's got, and we can't even tell half the time, we have these tests. How many disorders are out there right now that we don't even know about? Like HUU. There was no such thing as HU when I started in American Bulldogs. Never heard of it. Matter of fact, I've never had trouble. I had a call about 7 or 8 years ago from a desperate lady that had a dog. She knew who I was just from the internet, and she had this dog, and it had the kidney problems. What happens with that HUU and bad, what happens is the kidneys make too many kidney stones. And it got so bad in her dog that it needed surgery to remove those. And she told me it was going to cost $10,000. And she's like, is my dog going to be okay afterwards? I said, I wish I could tell you. I've never had that. I have had female puppies early on, 25 years ago, that people would say, yeah, I don't know what's going on. She has like a constant UTI. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe she'll grow out of it. And some of them just grow out of it. But they would find crystals in their urine and all this stuff. And I wondered if that had something to do with the HUU. So,
well, I can add a little bit to your.
I just have 2 dogs to test. And once I get no carriers, I don't have to worry about it anymore unless I bring something new in. But, well, I have experience with that. I started my own little breed. I don't do it anymore, but I started my own little bulldog called an Alu Bull. They were like an alternative bulldog. I use Staffy Bull, English Bulldog, and American Bulldogs. And I just lost passion for them. I wasn't as interested in, but I did that for like 12, 13, 14 years or something like that. So, and I didn't do it on a huge scale. I didn't have, 150 dogs, but I saw what crossing, what you get, what you don't, all the little different things. And the only thing has lived on in those is I produced a dog that Jamie Sweet used to make her, how are they called? Shorty Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got about 4, 5, 6 generations maybe into it. And, it taught me that, hey, I wanted like a 50-pound dog. I basically wanted a Staffy Bull that was about 50 pounds that had the bone and more of a head similar to a bulldog. And I got it in dogs, but I got a lot of dogs that I didn't get it in. I got a lot of dogs that I was like, why the hell am I'd take a 62-pound English Bulldog and breed it to a 70-pound American Bulldog, and I'd get 130-pound dogs. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I don't want to.
Giantism was there. That's why.
I guess some of that English Bulldog blood is big Mastiff dogs with dwarfism, because that's the only way I can think of. They get a huge bone. So when you outcross them, it happened over and over. I had a dog. There was a lady in Southern Illinois. It was $500 to breed her dog. She had a champion English Bulldog. He was 62 pounds, I think. And I bred an oldie that I bought from a guy in Dacula, Georgia. And she was literally like 52 pounds. Anyway, there was a pup in there. I docked their tails. He was a brindle dog. And I called him Rock because he was the laziest, dumbest puppy. Just sit there. Well, anyway, I sold him. And then a couple of years later, I got a knock on my door. And the guy's like, hey, I bought a dog from you. I wanted to show you what he looks like. We're real happy with him. And I'm like, walk out of my house. And he opens the back seat of his Mustang, and this like 90-pound Rottweiler, brindle Rottweiler comes out. It looked like a Rottweiler, but brindle. And I'm like, I didn't produce this dog. What the hell's going on? And then I looked in the back seat and I saw his daughter, and I remembered her because she was like 4 years old, and she was a little blind girl. She was a little blind toddler. And it clicked. And I thought, oh, I said, this is Rock. He goes, yeah. I'm like, how did I get this big ass dog? And that happened over and over again. But anyway, that's the trials of producing oldie. Oldies. I don't know as much about oldies nowadays. Actually, that was probably one of the reasons why I never stuck with it, because my idea of what I wanted and what the general consensus of oldie breeders, they just wanted a big English Bulldog. I wanted a Staffy Bull, a bigger, thicker Staffy Bull.
Well, you're explaining something that, if I might comment on it, first let's explain what happens when you cross two breeds, and then we'll explain what happened. There are examples where it succeeded, and there are examples where it failed. We have examples we can point to. So first, regarding your explanation, you have a dominant gene masking a recessive gene. And in a breed, you have a lot of what's called allelic frequency. You have a lot of recessive stacked up over time because they're repeated, because everybody's related to everybody else. When you breed an outside breed into your breed, that dominant masks that recessive. So you haven't gotten rid of the disease, you immediately masked it, giving the appearance through heterozygosity that you have hybrid vigor. because now you create a heterozygous state
Oh.
versus a homogeneous state, right? That's what you've done. That's what causes it to look healthy, but in reality, those genes are still there and nothing has disappeared. They were simply was masked. Now, so that's what happens when you outbreed two unrelated breeds. Now, what examples do we have which was successful? Take, for example, the Shiloh Shepherd by Tina Barber, a breeder in the 1970s and 1980s. She took the German Shepherd, was not satisfied. They don't have a flat, straight back. And she wanted the Shepherd of her childhood, which was a 120-pound dog. Now, a proper German Shepherd is not 120 pounds. So she bred a German Shepherd to a Malamute, crossed in a Great Pyrenees for size, and bred back to the German Shepherd. And by 1983, her gene pool was exhausted because she said the same initial foundation dogs to start the breed. They kept breeding back to them. Now everything is related to everything else. She then had to go to the Swiss Shepherd, the White Shepherd, and the Svilak, the Czechoslovakian wolf dog, which looks like a wolf, but it's actually a German Shepherd mix with very little wolf DNA. And then she bred that in to re-expand the gene pool. Now the Shiloh Shepherd is accepted and known breed. Another example is the VEO, the Eastern European Shepherd. Back in the days of the Soviet Union in the 1950s, the KGB wanted a dog for harsh winter conditions of Siberia. So they took the German Shepherd, bred it up to the local dogs called ovcharkas. And the word ovcharka in Russian means shepherd. Katya, I'm on the phone. I'm doing a show. I'll call you. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Papa, she gonna get you.
Would you excuse me for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, go ahead.
1 second.
Just mute your mic, Alex. Alex for the cuss her out. Hey, but so hey Vito, so let me get into this because I want to get into the nitty gritty. You know, so you and him are opposite because I know you kind of like you're not with that Purebred and AKC stuff, and you think I hear you say before like that's not how it was done. It was done purely out function in the beginning. And different things like that. Just give me your thoughts on some things that the audience might not.
I talk so much about my big thing. If people watch me, they'll see I fucking hate the concept or the idea of purity, because what is pure? There's not a genetic pure anything.
What? No, but do you believe dogs are like racist, like me being black and you being white? You believe in that concept of dogs being that we both know I'm not no pure African. You know what I mean? Is that what you mean about?
I'm actually African too.
I'm sure you are.
Ancestry.com. I'm like 5% North African.
I bet you are. Yeah, I bet you are.
But
you know, Vito, is a old joke. They say if you shake your family tree hard enough, a Negro will fall out.
That's the original man. That's where we came from.
Africa, yeah, for sure.
No, in my American Bulldogs, there's probably only one breeder that I know of that has more tightly bred COI dogs.
My wife was after knee surgery, so I apologize. I had to go upstairs.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. I just want to apologize to the audience.
Oh, no problem. Family first.
Yeah.
So Alex, Vito is saying why he doesn't like purity, and he's explaining.
I'll give you a counter argument. I know he's going to say high COI leads to disease.
Yeah. Let's let him.
Finish. Yeah. Go ahead, Vito. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I like I said, my line of American Bulldogs, people have complained. It's like, oh, don't breed to a Braveheart dog. They dominate. Well, that's because I've inbred them. I've inbred dogs, I guarantee you, more than just about any breeder except maybe a game bred pit bull breeder. But I've also outcrossed. I've also tried to make a new breed. I've done all kinds of weird stuff. Like I guess I'm in the alternative deal, you know, with the American Bulldogs. Like I said, when I started in 1988, if the truth were to be known, I was probably breeding St. Bernard crosses. I was probably breeding English dogs or English Bulldog crosses, dogs that, who knows, Pit Bull cross. There was all kinds of stuff. It was a new breed. So they, on one hand, they couldn't tell the truth. On the other hand, they had to try to make the breed live up to the history. So there was all kinds of, it was a composite breed. I tell a story of, I bred these two, there was a dog called Tyson. He was 3/4 Johnson, 1/4 Painter. He was like 135, had a humongous head, just beautiful dog, had a great temperament. Everything was great about him. And he was in on the West Coast. He was owned by a chiropractor. And there was a breeder up there that bred the standard type, which there's two types of American Bulldogs. One is more like a houndy pit bull, and the other one's more like a bull mastiff, English bulldog, hybrid looking, you know, big bully dog. Well, so this dog's real big and bully, but he's only 3/4 of the bully blood. He's 1/4 outcross. So he's, you know, he's hybrid vigor, basically is what he is. Well, this guy with standard dogs bred to him for the first couple years, and he produced really noteworthy great dogs, but they didn't look anything like them. They didn't even look like the same breed. They were standard types. And so there was a bunch of stuff. And of course, back then I knew everything. And I was like, wow, they're breeding that dog. They need to breed him to a bully female. You know, they don't breed it to the typey dog that looks like him. Well, what happened was there was a guy in Texas that would buy dogs from people. He was a moneymaker type of dude. And he told the guy, if you ever sell him, call me. He said, oh, I'll never sell this dog. So then he got a call and said, I'm getting divorced. I need to sell him. So he bought him for like $5 or $10 grand. And he was about making money, this guy in Texas. And so he offered him up for stud. So I was one of the first people to breed to him. I bred bully females. I bred 3 times, and then I convinced this other breeder to breed a female to him. And anyway, I had a half brother, half sister off that dog, and I thought, man, I've solved it. I did it. I'm going to put these two awesome dogs together, and they're going to produce I'm going to get Tyson. I'm going to get 135-pound, big jack-o'-lantern head, big old, looks like a lion when he runs. So I bred them together. She had 12 puppies. And let me tell you what I had in that litter. I had pit bulls. I had boxers. I even had like a miniature English bulldog. I had a St. Bernard looking English bulldog. I had everything. And if you saw the two dogs I bred, they were beautiful. They looked almost, they were half brother and sister, but they looked like they came from the same litter. And so that just tells you Tyson was hybrid vigor. Line breeding on Tyson, you're not going to get it. The only way you're going to get it is if you stack it for many generations. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but most people won't do that.
Right.
So it's not that I am against line breeding, inbreeding. I'm the poster boy. I do it, but I started in breeds that are composite breeds, are new breeds. People say they're pure. You get the papers, you know, they're pure. But genetically, I know now there's just no way. Now American Bulldogs are line bred and all that stuff. And I've seen what happens when a new breed, you know, our dogs are different. You know, back then I had a dog that was 29 inches and 148 pounds. He was gigantic. Like there were people back then, everything was about size. And the people that advertised 150 pounds, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I never saw anybody's dog anywhere close to the size of my dog. And so what happened was when people started line breeding and breeding, you know, for a certain type, all of a sudden the average dog started getting smaller. The dogs would go back. So it went back to the average of the gene pool, you know. And so you can start crossing dogs and make a breed and all this stuff. But until you start line breeding, it's kind of like when you cross up a bunch of dogs, think of it as like a hill full of snow and you're going to go sledding. You know what happens, you know, when you go sledding, a whole bunch of people go sledding, all of a sudden these ruts develop And no matter where you start, you're going to end up in that rut. Well, that's what happens when you start, cutting down a gene pool and creating a family of dogs and producing consistency. They tend to go into that little rut until if you outcross them completely, you'll get a whole new, there'll be no ruts. You'll have a whole new path. But eventually, once you're sledding down there, you're going to hit those ruts again. So I just think in the established breeds, all established breeds, there should be some kind of a process to allow fresh genetics to come in. Not, if you got German Shepherds, they shouldn't say, hey, you guys want to cross something in, go ahead and do it. They should have, if there's a problem, they should have a group of breeders that want to do it and raise the money to have a population that they can not introduce to the general population, but make a synthetic version of that breed that doesn't have that problem and test them. And then once they get to the point where it reproduces and it's a little line of dogs that as a subline, then use it to clean the other dogs up. That's what originally we talking about Dobermans. And I finally told you, it's not my breed anymore. So I don't know. I don't know if I should do it. Now I see everybody's talking about what they should do to fix the Doberman.
Yeah. And before we go, I'm going to get y'all opinions on the Doberman. But Alex,
I wanted to kind of input on Vito's comments and then offer some of my own, if I might.
Right.
So I made a video on my channel of how a new breed is created. And the question is, at which point is it still a mix? And at which point does a mix start to become a breed? In other words, all breeds, except land races, which are natural breeds, start off as a mix, but at which point do you consider a mix an actual breed that will reproduce and breed true? And I made a show on that in great detail, and I'll touch on it very briefly, because Vito explained how dogs would be throwbacks to the original breed. Imagine in your mind's eye, for the sake of conversation, a bowl of grapes, scallions, and tomatoes. 3 different vegetables, okay? And I take a spoon, and I want mostly tomatoes, a little bit of scallions, and very little tomatoes. Well, the problem is this scoop will create mostly scallions and a little bit of onions. The next scoop will create mostly tomatoes and only a little bit of grapes. The next scoop will create, so every time I scoop 3 fruits, in my example, each combination will be not at the same proportion of the vegetable I care about. And also, not only the proportions are different, but each time the proportions are not discrete. It's not always 30-30, 40, it's not always 20-80. In other words, the ratios are different. And because of gene recombination, you get inconsistency in traits. So what happens is, the way a breed is normally created is, let's say we'll take an example of a poodle and Labrador mix. Let's say you would take a poodle and a Labrador, male and female, another poodle and Labrador, male and female, and breed them together. Now you have a 50-50 cross in each side, right? But if the Labrador male is a brother to the Labrador female, now you have homogeneity of genes. So you're not mixing breeds, you're mixing dogs. The dog represents the breed, but you're breeding the dog, you're not breeding the breed. And people think, well, I have 25% poodle. No, you have 25% that dog, not the breed. So it takes at least 8 generations to create a breed. So the F1 cross is 50-50 of each breed. The F2 cross is where you have all the problems, where you have all the inconsistency because of gene recombination. By the time you have the F3 cross, you still have inconsistency. It takes until the F5 cross. Now you're starting to see homogeneity of traits. By the time you get to the 8th generation, you will now start seeing a consistent type. Now, what do you do then? You create your standard animal, which is your reference perfect animal that you want your breed to look like. That's your standard. And you breed him to his own daughters. And people may not like that idea because it's incest, it's inbreeding, but that's how Harold von Grafef, the first German Shepherd, was used. He was not an online bred dog. He actually was already line bred himself. And the dogs in Germany, which were farm dogs of various types, were bred to him, and a lot of them didn't resemble him. Those which did resemble him in phenotype were bred to each other. So you had a bunch of cousin crosses. And then all the cousins which looked phenotypically similar, which were the Thuringian Shepherd, which is who Harold von Grafef was then bred back to their grandfather or father, and that's how the breed became a breed. You first do a bunch of mixes, see which combination out of that entire mixed population phenotypically resembles the end goal you're trying to achieve. Achieve your end goal animal, that is the breed you wanted to create phenotypically, and then incestuously breed on that foundation male. And that's how a breed is started. Now, getting back to Vito's point, he's right. Different breeds, when you mix them together, will have throwbacks in the F2 and F3 generation, and it takes 30 years to create a breed. So people who think, oh, I've mixed a pit bull and a Malinois, I have a breed. No, you have an F1 cross. Or I mixed a poodle with a Labrador. That's a breed called the Labrador.
What determines it a breed? The COI?
No, what determines if it breeds true. If I breed two examples from the same type, the puppies don't have throwbacks to the original starting breeds.
So Vito, in your history of breeding dogs, how long does it take to create a breed, in your opinion?
That's the thing about breeding that I found. There's X plus Y does not equal Z. That's like saying how many snowflakes of a certain kind can you line up together. You could breed, like you could try to recreate the Doberman and try to do what Herr Louis Doberman did. But even if you knew the exact recipe, doesn't matter. It doesn't, because two dogs, don't always, it's not like a baking a cake. Two dogs, it's like having 15 roulette wheels flipping around, and what they land on, and when your dog's more line bred or inbred, he's got fewer odds, but there's not really a good recipe. So like you could do a breeding, and that's where, being a breeder comes in. You got to evaluate what you got, and you got to make a mental note as to what, hey, the grandfather, this may take after this, it might take after that, and people are always telling me, I want to do this, I want to inbreed. I'm like, well, before you inbreed, you got to make sure you have a really good dog. And then it's still risky. So you got to watch what you produce. But in my breed, like I said, American Bulldogs, when I got into it, it was, a recent cross. There was no organization. It was all lies. It was all, under the table. Even though our main registry had their NKC is kind of a field trial type of registry for hunting dogs. And in a lot of hunting breeds, they allow an outcross, but they call it a 7/8 rule. So let's say you wanted to outcross to something, that's fine, but they won't count it. They won't register it until it's 1/8 of the outcross or less. So, but nobody did it. Only one guy or two guys documented what they did. And you know what? They were chastised to this day, 30 years later. People
yeah.
It's like people have this idea that, the pedigree, saying their dog is pure, or it hasn't had outcross, or it's been bred, that makes it pure, makes it good. Whereas I think, more than 200, 300, 400 years ago, they bred good dogs. They weren't maybe thought of as strict breeds. People had them for work, for whatever. I don't know the history of the German Shepherd, but in Italy they call him Cane Lupo, which means a wolf dog. And I imagine that type of shepherd was probably pretty common all over the place. Like Herr Louis Doberman, some people say he used a German.
He didn't use the German Shepherd. He used the predecessor of the German Shepherd.
It was named after the little town.
Right.
But those dogs weren't bred the way we breed dogs today. They didn't have an AKC. Nobody gave a crap about the papers. It was all like, how does he do herding sheep? You know, how's he,
Right.
you know, can I put the money from after we get paid in his collar and he won't let anybody grab it? You know, it was pure bull. There's a story of English bulldogs. If you read, it might be bullshit. I don't know. It might be true. If you get English bulldog books and you read, they have these stories from the 1500s of a guy that brought a female bulldog to a bull baiting contest, and she had puppies. And this probably going to get PETA calls. I don't know if it's true. This is a story. But to show what a good, perfect, pure bulldog she was, the way to prove that was they had her catch a bull. And when she grabbed onto the bull's nose or ear, whatever it was, he took a big sword and cut off her back leg, and she didn't let go. And then he cut off her other leg, and she didn't let go. And so then they killed her, I guess, sliced her in half. That was the story. But it just, the mindset of people back then was, what makes a bulldog, a purebred dog, a dog that can catch a bull? What makes a bird dog, a purebred bird dog, a dog that can, and if it can't, guess what? It's not pure.
Right.
And if you know anything about game-bred dogs and the whole thing, game-bred breeders for hundreds and hundreds of years, they test their dogs. They may have 5 dogs in the same litter. They test them, and if the dog doesn't test game, it's called a cur. It's not. They don't even consider it a pit bull.
Vito, can I let me get in here right quick. Hold on, Alex. I know you're ready, Alex. Just 1 second. Just hold it, because you're gonna get off on this one too. So, Vito, would you agree that selective breeding has been around since the beginning of time? And would you also assume before the purebred movement, before they start organizing, that it was possibly already these pockets of breeds that maybe made them think, let's come together and start showing them? Or
that happened in the Victorian days. They didn't really have dog shows. They had field trials and things like that.
Field trials, yeah.
They didn't really have what we think of as a dog show, a beauty contest. It was purely, you have a shepherd. Well, I need to breed my female because my dogs are getting old and I need dogs to move these sheep. Is he a good dog? Yeah, he's a good dog. Okay, let's breed them together. And then they raise 4 or 5 of them. And this one's an idiot. That one's lazy. This one's great. The other ones, they get buried out behind the barn or given away to somebody.
They wouldn't focus on aesthetics as much. They was focused on the jobs.
If I might jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
All right. A couple of points. So what happened in the past cannot be repeated today in any meaningful way. Let me explain. When Captain Max von Stephanitz, which was a cavalry military officer riding on horseback, bred the German Shepherd, he used horse breeding as his reference. So if a cavalry mount couldn't jump over a jump or a hurdle, it wasn't bred. If a fully loaded rider with armor on and a rifle, and it was pretty laden down with equipment, so that horse had to be strong enough with a 200-pound man plus equipment jumping over a jump and maintain perfect control and not throw the rider, right? So now he used the concept of horse breeding in German Shepherds, but one man had control, Captain Max von Stephanitz. And from 1899 until 1935, when he died, 36 years, one man decided what was a German Shepherd and what is not a German Shepherd. And he would not allow certain dogs to breed because he ruled with an iron fist, saying you can breed and call it a German Shepherd, or you can not call it a German Shepherd. So one man was firmly in control of the breed registry. Now today in Germany, a breed warden, a Kormeister, visits your house and checks that the dogs you're breeding are actually pure and they match the dog you have in your possession is actually the dog in the pedigree. That you're not substituting some fake name, and it's actually not the actual real dog as in the papers. They actually inspect you before you breed that dog. And the dog has to pass what's the Schutzen trial. Now, nowadays, Schutzen is a sport. But back in the day, it was a selection test, just like the cavalry horse that could jump over an obstacle to be considered breed worthy. So too, a German Shepherd had to do 3 trials: protection, obedience, and tracking. A dog that could pass a Schutzen trial and get a Korong, which is a breed survey, was allowed to breed. And a dog which couldn't pass a Schutzen trial and couldn't pass a breed survey was castrated and not allowed to breed. And so he devised a temperament test and a fitness test which outlived him. And so the main breeder of the breed created a standard by which to decide what is breed worthy and not. Now, the Blitz split into 5 subtypes. I'm not going to cover that at this moment because it's not germane to this exact topic at this very moment. Now, a similar test exists in Holland. It's called the KNPD, the Royal Dutch Police Dog Sport. They cross Malinois with Dutch Shepherds, and sometimes German Shepherds, and sometimes Pit Bulls, and sometimes with Great Danes. And then they cross back to the Malinois. It's called the ex-Malinois to distinguish it from the pure-blooded Malinois. Now, as long as the dog performs in biting a man in a bite suit, after the man runs at it, threatening it with a stick, and the dog has courage, doesn't give up, that dog is breed worthy despite not having a pure pedigree. So in the Belgian Malinois, KNPV is the equivalent of Schutzen in the German Shepherd. And so when they resurrected the Dutch Shepherd, those which could do this test were bred, and those which were too cowardly to face an opponent were not bred. So the founder of the breed, in the case of the Dutch Shepherd and the German Shepherd, which were created around the same time from what's called the Continental Shepherd. That's why the Belgian Shepherd, the Dutch Shepherd, and the German Shepherd kind of look alike phenotypically because they come from the original same breeding stock called the Continental Shepherd. They were not defined breeds quite yet, but they had a similar look. Even today, a Dutch Shepherd and a German Shepherd have a similar phenotype, even today. So what I'm saying is that the control of the breed by a hard taskmaster allowed the German Shepherd to survive and thrive until it was ruined in the 1970s by the Martin brothers, the Weinerau Kennel, with Canto Weinerau and Quanto, because are in Armenians, because they narrowed the gene pool to those 3 dogs. But I'm not going to get into that because the breed developed into the show type and the working type, and then the East German Shepherd became its own type because of the Berlin Wall, being put up in 1961 when the Soviet Union divided Germany. In 1945, Germany was divided, but the Berlin Wall went up in 1961. And if those who remember history, the Soviet Union attacked Czechoslovakia in 1968 and trying to break away from the Soviet bloc. So the Soviet Union sent tanks to Hungary in 1955 and to Czechoslovakia in 1968, which is why the Czechs hate communists, because they were invaded by the very people who rescued them from the Nazis.
Right.
And now Czechoslovakia points Russian-made missiles at Russia, and it's part of NATO now. So the East German Shepherd developed to protect people crossing into the West, which tried to escape the communist bloc. And so that was the reason those dogs were bred. So state police agencies needed that kind of a dog. In other words, the political circumstances of the time, now we're not talking 19th century anymore, we're now talking 20th century, dictated that the DDR and the Czech dogs derived from the DDR were created. So certain political factors led to that gene pool being isolated to East Germany only, as opposed to being interbred with West Germany. Now,
right.
Now,
we got 15 minutes left.
Yeah. Well, so why am I bringing all this up? In a purebred dog, you can have a low CLI, a low coefficient of inbreeding, anything below 6.25%, which is a first cousin mating, let's say 5%, is considered safe. But if the AVK is below 65%, you're still going to have disease. In other words, what prevents disease is not keeping COI low. You can have a low COI, but if you have a low AVK, ancestry loss coefficient, your gene pool is too narrow, you're still going to have disease, and that's when you must outbreed. Now, Vito's point, which if I'm hearing him right, is that the political resistance of organizations like the AKC, which only puts on shows and wants their $20, $30 fee, is the stopping factor of injecting fresh blood. I would argue it's not the problem. I would argue the AKC wants its $20, $30 and it doesn't care what you register, even if you have a fake pedigree. I don't think they really care. I think the problem is the show breeders, which inject so much cash into the shows, control the AKC in the United States. In Europe, for the Doberman and for the Rottweilers, the DVG, the Working Dog Association. For the German Shepherd, it's the SV, the Very-Schuferhund. So the way to fix our breeds, which are genetically sick, von Willebrand's disease in the Doberman, MDR1 in the Collie, hemophilia, the dog bleeds out from even the smallest cut. Dog can't breathe, dog can't reproduce naturally, must be bred through C-sections. That's why I'm against these microbullies. That's an unnatural breed that would not survive if it was not for C-sections and artificial insemination. A dog must be able to reproduce naturally and breathe air into its lungs naturally. Any breed that is that deformed should not be kept.
Hey,
alive.
Alexander, for the sake of time, let me cut you for a minute because we won't have time for questions because we only got a few minutes left. So let me just end with this, or with both of your thoughts on this. So often you hear the dogs aren't the same of yesteryear, right? And I was talking to a couple of gentlemen. I think some of them mean that the dogs ain't crazy because some of the age of some of these guys are saying this don't make sense of them working them type of dogs back in the day. You know what I mean? So, but I think it's just a talking point nowadays. But being that no matter what we say about working this, working that, doing this or doing that, most of these dogs are going to families, right? And now we have a dog, which all dogs are companions, right? So in your opinion, Vito, the companion's temperament, the Brazilian bull, what do you see the future for it? What is the advantage of how y'all breed the dog compared to purebred dogs? What do you think that's gonna be the best thing going for you?
I'm still learning about Brazilian bulls, but
Okay.
If I were to outline with the Brazilian bull, Alex's head would pop off. Because you talk about an F1, it's an F1, F2 breeding, F1, F2, F3. There's very few generational. After an F3, I call them generational dogs. Mm-hmm. But the Brazilian bull is a breed made by basically three different breeds, and up until a week or two ago, you could, in Brazil they do it. I don't know about the United States now. They're going to start making, or maybe for Vito, I don't know. They're going to start making these rules. They used to, you could just register an F1. It's registered dog. The whole program is open. It's the Wild Wild West. And you know what's weird? There is a lot of consistency. That's what I was
going to ask you. How are y'all getting that consistency so early off?
I don't know. I don't know if it's hybrid vigor on top of hybrid vigor. I don't know, but they,
probably have some pretty potent dogs in your lines.
There's like 5 generations maybe on some of those dogs, and you think, like I said, American Bulldogs, we've had hybrid vigor. We had Tyson, a couple other early dogs that were exceptional, and but they didn't reproduce themselves, and nobody could lock that in. Nobody was locking it in. course, I have no idea how many breeds or what, these dogs came from. They could have been something that was wandering on the road that looked like a bulldog. Who knows? But in this breed, if you look, if you can see the banner behind me,
Yeah.
those are pretty close, and they're pretty similar dogs. They have similar proportions, crazy muscle, and some of those are F2s and F3s. The black dog Puma, he's the fawn dog's dad or son. That's his dad, Klaus, the fawn dog.
Yeah.
And Klaus, he's not an F1. He's probably an F3, but he's an F3 that's like barely related to the other ones. Mm-hmm. And he throws pretty consistent his features, which I would have thought those extreme features, that crazy proportions, those dogs are 22 inches, 130 pounds, and the big head and the crazy muscle on their skull and cheeks. But it goes against, when I first heard them say, Aria said, hey, you could breed that to a bulldog. I'm like, what are you talking about, bulldog? They call American bulldogs bulldogs over there. And that's an F1 cross. Breed their dogs to an American bulldog. It's an F1. Well, I'm like, what do you mean? She said, yeah, they register them first generation. It's allowed. It's okay. So it's the wild, wild west. It's a totally different thing. And I advocate for more of it, because right now that breed is not a breed. Some people say, oh, it's not a breed. Well, it's not really a regular breed. It's not even an infant breed. It's like a zygote. The cells have just started developing. It's not even ready to be birthed. But I think it's good to expand that gene pool, as long as you're keeping the type of the dog.
The type. Yeah. You know what?
That gene pool, 50 years, 100 years from now, they may not run out of genetics. They may have enough. It won't be a shallow gene pool.
Vito, before we go to Alex and before we wrap this up, you just said a couple things, which is interesting. Bet you early start of the breed, and you can see the type. But you can see little differences, but I can see differences in phenotype and Dobermans and Rottweilers, old breeds too. But why has the Rottweiler, for the most part, stood as strong as it has through the years without running into the problems like the Doberman and things like that? Because which one come from which? Did Doberman come from the Rottweiler, right?
Supposedly,
or was it the other way around?
The Rottweiler was used. It was German Pinscher, Rottweiler, Weimaraner, Greyhound, Boucheron, and then later Great Dane and short-haired wired pointer, maybe.
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking you, because like the Germans, they use strict practices on, like doing some of the title stuff that Alex was talking about and hard pedigree stuff. Why has it lasted so long without the issues of the Doberman, in your opinion? Damn, somebody gave me some money, man. I appreciated you, man.
Rottweiler is a cattle droving dog and a butcher's dog, and could be a war dog, probably ancestry of all that. So, maybe they maintained a big thing. I remember when Rottweilers became famous here in the United States, like in the 80s, 70s, 80s, everybody was get a Rott. And but things have changed, and now I had a friend a protection guy that got one, and he said, yeah, they're starting to change. They're getting bully. I'm like, what are you talking about? He sent me a picture of some Rottweiler with a really kicked in muzzle. And he said, yeah, this is like coming into the show type or something.
Yeah. Timator. Yeah.
Is that what they call them?
Yeah. Timator line. Yeah. They got a different type in there. It's kind of taken over. It got look like a pug face. Yeah.
I don't get that.
Me neither. Extremes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, Alex, go ahead.
I think your question was all dogs have to be companions no matter what their function is, right? That was the question.
Yeah, that was one of them. Yeah.
If you look at the East German Shepherd, let's say, which existed from 1945 to 1989, I think nobody would argue that the dog is sweet. The dog was very suspicious, very high defense drive, low prey drive, hard to motivate, in many cases very dominant. Now, I'm not saying every single dog you meet had those characteristics, but by and large, they were very suspicious, very aggressive dogs. And so that dog is not an inappropriate dog to keep in the breeding program. You do need aggression in the breed, which is a protection breed. I had an East German Shepherd in 2001, very suspicious, hard to motivate, low prey drive. Now you are breeding the opposite extreme. Extremely Malinois-like German Shepherds with extreme prey drive, very twitch nerves, and too much of a Malinois. The mix that I like, which is from the early 2000s, 2004, 2008, were German Shepherds bred, which were good dogs, meaning they were balanced. They were balanced between defense and prey and sociability and friendliness. And they represented not an extreme phenotype in terms of top line. And so different camps believe in different dogs. Some people believe the East German dog was the best dog, that the East German dog represented the pinnacle of the German Shepherd breeding. Some people feel the show lines, the high Seeger lines, the black and red dogs with the roach banana backs, they feel that's the breed standard. Some people feel the West German working line, which is what I believe is the breed standard. Bottom line is not everybody has to agree to the breed standard, but the only way you can resurrect the pure breed, see, there's two arguments. Vito is arguing start again, create a new breed, and then you're in control, and you have an open stud book. I disagree. I think our heritage breeds are worth preserving, but they're worth surgically repairing when the ADK falls too low. So the way to determine when a breed is healthy is to measure the ancestry loss coefficient. There's a graph of COI against ABK, and some breeds are not there yet, but they're pretty soon going to exhaust their gene pool, and you'll have to outbreed to rescue the breed. So there are two camps, one which doesn't want to deal with the politics of the AKC and the breed clubs,
right,
and would rather start a fresh breed from scratch, which is what Vito is recommending. And then there are purists like me, which do not want to see our heritage breeds disappear. No matter how pure looking they are in the F3 cross, they may look the same because they start off from bullies in the first place. So no wonder they look the same. They have a common foundation stock and their starting point. So there's already shared genetics. That's why they look in a few generations very similar, because they're not starting from scratch as independent breeds. They're starting off with a similar phenotype in the first place. And therefore they look consistent very quickly because they're not starting off as very different breeds. For example, if I bred a Cocker Spaniel to a German Shepherd, I would get a complete inconsistency immediately. But if I bred a German Shepherd to a Dutch Shepherd, well, they already have similar phenotype. So therefore my F1 cross or even my F3 cross would already look consistent because the dogs I'm starting with are of the same phenotype. So the fact that Vito is seeing consistency as early as the F3 generation, that's not surprising because the dogs he's starting with already have common genetic material and common phenotype. So that's not my argument. My argument is that once your breed exhausts its ancestry loss coefficient and there's no more healthy gene carriers to be found, a strategic outcross, which is sanctioned, not unsanctioned, by the registry body, such as the AKC in the United States, or be it the British Bulldog, the UKC, the United Kennel Club, if it's sanctioned and you have at least 50 breeders involved for 50 dogs or more, because one or two crosses is not enough to influence an entire gene pool. You need enough volume of blood to create enough gene change for the statistical odds to change. So now what I'm saying is, when you had a breed warden which was the founder of the breed, controlled the breed for 35, 36 years with an iron fist. That's what it took to keep the breed proper on its tracks. But no such person for any given breed exists today.
Right.
Louis
right.
Doberman is dead. Captain Max von Stefanitz is dead. The Johnson Bulldog creators are dead. The Collie creators of the British Collie are dead. The Sheltie Collie creators are dead. Every foundation breeder, which started off that breed from being a land race and becomes an homogeneous, recognizable breed, they're dead. So what has to happen is one of three things. Those are the way to fix, and then I'll pass, and then I'll stop.
Okay.
Number one, you need a breed registry, which will sanction it and agree to it and enforce it with a sub-gene pool of dogs, which will become an acceptable outcross. And after the 5th generation, you introduce that blood into the gene pool at large. So instead of having a head taskmaster in charge, you have an organization in charge. The problem with an organization in charge is that money enters into the picture, and they would prevent it because everybody would fight. Well, they're not pure, therefore they're not to be registered. But that's one way. An organization has to agree, do you want purity or do you want disease? So if you want purity for its own sake, then you're willing to accept disease. That's as simple as it is. So that's one solution. The other solution is to use a genetic product like CRISPR to splice out the bad genes.
It's gonna be too expensive. They're not gonna do it.
Too expensive, right? 50,000, right? But I'm saying it's, I'm just naming solutions. I'm not saying it's practical. I'm just naming solutions.
Yeah.
So you could use CRISPR to edit out bad genes. That's another solution. Too expensive, not worth it. And so the other solution is an underground solution where people breed, let's say, I'm not arguing for it, let's just say for argument's sake, they breed a Dutch Shepherd to a German Shepherd. You have KY, where since its brindle is dominant, not recessive, it's easy to breed out. And so you fix the breed by falsely registering a cross as purebred, and enough dogs are created that they reinvigorate the breed from the bottom up instead of the top down. Those are only three solutions. Do it sanctioned, but that's very hard because of political factors and economic factors, which is one way. Number two, genetic modification of breeds, which is too expensive. Or third, unsanctioned, which is underground crosses, and then the 5th generation cross is done and reintroduced to the gene pool at large. So that would involve faking pedigrees, though. And I'm against it.
But then wait, hold on, Alexander. Okay, you said sanctioned and
unsanctioned and unsanctioned, right?
So, but every genre of dogs not like that. Like in the bulldog arena, they have the freedom for
crossbreeding.
Crossbreeding.
Well, but it's
composite breeding.
Yeah, it's not a matter of bulldog. It's a matter of the concept. In other words,
yeah, exactly. That's what
the concept is the same across all dog breeds. So the ancestry loss coefficient,
right,
is in the bulldog, the British bulldog, which looks nothing like the Victorian bulldog. Right now, the concept of exhausting your gene pool is the same. That's when you look at thoroughbred racehorses, right?
Hold on. I gotta cut you off. Okay. Now, you said exhausting it, but the way Vito explains the way the open pedigree, he couldn't possibly run into what the purebred is going to run into, right?
Yes, you can, because think of it this way. Let's say I have a pit bull. I'm making up an example. Let's say I have a pit bull with diseases X, Y, Z. Let's say whatever they are, right?
Okay.
And I have a pointer. Let's just make up a name, a pointer. And I breed a pointer to a pit bull. Not that I would, but let's just hypothetically say those are my two breeds. Now, I've introduced the diseases of this breed into this breed, and the diseases of this breed into this breed. So diseases are breed specific. For example, let's say genital myelopathy. That's kind of specific to German Shepherds or some other breeds. Let's say MDR1. It's specific to collies. So not every disease is in every breed. You have 256 identified diseases, but certain diseases are in certain breeds. So by adding a crossbreed of a different gene pool, I'm not rescuing the original breed. I'm introducing diseases of the new breed into my breed, which were not there before.
Right.
So as you jail your population to become a new breed, guess what? Those recessives will eventually
We're gonna
line
pop
up,
up. Okay.
and you will again have disease. So in other words,
Okay.
the fact that the bully community allows crosses of various types, that's because people allow it, and that's because it's the number three solution, which is unsanctioned. Instead of going through a registry like the AKC or some other registry,
Right.
they create their own registry from scratch and then allow these crosses and have an open stud book.
Okay,
Now,
Vito.
so that's not the solution, though. It seems like the solution, but it's not.
But they don't want to be purebred. They don't want to. Their objective.
Eventually, they do.
But, really? Okay. Well, Vito, let me let you respond to that, and then we're gonna end it, man. We're gonna end this after this.
Well, I'll say I'm not just an advocate for crossing dogs. I'm like, I understand Dobermans, German Shepherds. If you have problems with that breed, what I'm saying is there should be an effort to either create a synthetic line or do the outcross like the Dalmatians did, or whatever. However you want to fix, however you can fix it, try to fix it. But this is my biggest point. Our mindset here in the United States and all over the world, I guess, is they won't let you fix it because people have this idea. Oh no, I don't want that Dalmatian that has a pointer 15 generations back that fixed our problem that is chronic. I don't want that because my dogs have to be pure. What I'm telling you is the concept of pure. Who cares if it's pure? If you think dogs with no outcross for 50 generations,
I agree. I agree with you.
Pure. If the dog's sick, if the dog dies at 6, my sister, her friend had this Doberman. They're not wealthy people. They bought this Doberman for all kinds of money. They put it down at 7 years of age. She told my sister, we spent $28,000 on that dog, keeping him healthy or whatever. And he died at 7. My friend is a vet and she loves Dobermans. She had one at almost the same time. They weren't related. This female called Hillary, and she's a vet. She went to specialists. She had her on all this medicine. And at 7 years of age, I'm hauling her out of her house to bury her because she had to be put down. So, I talked to her about that. I said, there needs to be a huge effort to resurrect a healthy gene pool to add or clean or however you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And you know what? This is a vet, and this isn't her first Doberman. She's got another Russian Doberman now. I don't know how it's going to do, but she's had 3 or 4. They don't live past 6 or 7, and they have cardiomyopathy or they have von Willebrand's disease or some other weird thing. But here, if there's a discussion with her, you know what she says to me? Oh, I don't want to lose. They're the Velcro dog. I don't want. I'm like, who gives a shit if it's a Velcro this or what? The dog's sick. The dog is not living a quality life. The dog, who wants?
And some breeds should be eliminated. Period. In my opinion.
What you say, Alexander?
Yeah. Some breeds, pocket bullies should be eliminated. British Bulldog should be eliminated. Period. They're too sick to live.
Yeah, but
it does make you feel bad. Some of you see,
and until people, consumers don't buy them. But I used to have the old English Bulldog, the Alu Bull, alternative Bulldog, and that was my customer. That's the only thing I really liked about him is it was easy to sell them to pet people. But I can't tell you how many times I had somebody called me. These people had English Bulldogs, like their family always had English Bulldogs. And the dog that I sold them had to be put down at like 9. And they told me, I'm talking to them and they're telling me how much they love the dog and this and that. And they told me, well, we had to have the entropia on his eyes fixed when he was 3. We have to give him chondroitin joint stuff because he did this and this, that. And I'm mortified. I'm like, oh God, I didn't know, I didn't hear, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like English Bulldogs like that. It's kind of the demise of the American
The demise
Bulldog.
of the original breed. It's a caricature of the original breed.
Okay,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
like when I cross them up, I had a female. I called her Mona Lisa. She was 4 months old. Her heart was so bad. I thought she had a cold. I took her in and I said, "What's the deal? It's summertime. Why would she be sniffling?" And he said, "I hate to tell you this, but her heart is terrible. You know, it's enlarged, and we're gonna have to put her down."
Right.
I'm like, "What?" And so that kind of stuff happened. And I was like, "How do you fix that? You know, if you breed a high percentage of English Bulldog, you're going to have all these weird mutated traits." But my point is, whatever we do, we need to change the mindset of people who think that purebred dogs are from another planet and you can never try to fix them. They have to stay pure. That's the most important thing. We don't care if they need surgery, if they're dying, if they can barely breathe and their life day to day sucks. They can't cool themselves. They can't even go on a freaking walk. They can't even, do all these weird things.
I agree with Vito.
Yep. And it's another part to that too. We need to kind of look at the other side of that, where we got guys that's like, why the hell are you putting a French bulldog and a damn German shepherd together? That shit don't make no damn sense to me. That wild crazy shit, and then really not having an explanation. Well, what's the point of it? It's never a good explanation. But anyway, guys, so I gotta get us out of here. So I want y'all to just give me very quick answers on my last question, so we can get out of here. Because I told the audience I was going to ask you.
Okay.
So starting with you, Alexander, being that the Doberman is the modern dog that's facing the most issues right now, per se, what would you cross to reconstruct that Doberman?
What I would do is the French Besseron, which is one of the breeds used to start the Doberman. If you look at them, they're very similar. Or the Rottweiler. I would create a farm where money was pulled together to finance this, because you can't do any of this without money. It takes money to feed 50 dogs. It takes money to house 50 dogs, right? So it's not a one-man effort because of the financial cost involved. So you can't do it without considering the money aspect of it. But let's say money was brought together from an angel investor or something, right? I would take a French Besseron Doberman cross, which was free of all these diseases.
Okay.
And I would do a 5-generation cross. Then once it's shown not to have the disease and the temperament can pass the Schutzen trial, which I believe is a very good test for a lot of breeds, especially working breeds, I would then introduce that cleaned up genetic into the gene pool at large at volume, at a high volume. Same thing with the Collie. It has the MDR1 gene. It cannot survive anesthesia. It dies on the operating table.
Right.
I would take the Sheltie, which is a very close breed, find the ones which don't have MDR1, breed a Collie with the Sheltie. Yes, it'll decrease the size, but it'll get rid of the disease. Create a gene pool of at least 50 to 100 dogs, which are crosses. I understand that. And then introduce that 5th-generation cross back into the Collie gene pool at large.
Okay.
Any breed has to be outbred at large, at volume, and then bred back to the main population.
Gotcha.
Provided money was there to finance this. That's my solution.
Thank you. Okay. Vito, what would be your solution?
I've thought about
I know you're the mad scientist now.
Like I said, it broke my heart, and that's why it's not my breed anymore. But I think the Doberman is so far gone. I'm not saying that all the Dobermans that are in existence now need to die. They could be used if you can figure out a way to test for that cardiomyopathy, and figure the inheritance out.
We can.
But I think what they need to do is, and I think older established breeds like that, if it was commonplace, if their breed club got together and said, "Hey man, we have trouble with this. We need to work on getting rid of this, isolating it and getting rid of it." With the Doberman, I think you need to create synthetic lines that are totally unrelated. And I would, if you could get 5, 6, 8 different breeders that could, they could share some of the dogs a little bit, but it's not so much what they use, it's which dog they use. Like I would take a Dutch Shepherd or a Malinois, but it'd have to be, it has to check out on everything, healthy, workability, all that stuff, instead of the local Shepherd they use. I'd use a German short-haired pointer. I'd get field trial dogs that are tested, that are bulletproof. A lot of those dogs in that breed are bulletproof. I'd use either one of your guests, the one guy, I didn't watch the whole show, but he said a giant Schnauzer. I think either an Airedale or a giant, it might be easier to find a giant Schnauzer.
Oh, Armin Winkler, yeah.
Yeah, because a Doberman Pinscher is German for terrier. And a Doberman, it should be like a big terrier, big, hypo, very energetic, your relentless dog. And they're, that one thing about Dobermans, they're like a gymnast. They move great. They can turn on a dime. They're very athletic. And then I'd use, the Airedale, it came from an Otter Hound and a Black and Tan Terrier, and then the giant Schnauzer. And then I'd use the Greyhound. The Greyhound, I don't think was used a whole lot in the Doberman, but Greyhounds are, you can't kill them with a ball peen hammer. They live forever. They have a gigantic heart, way bigger than, a regular dog's heart, because compared to the mass of their body, the racing Greyhounds rarely get anything. They don't get the problems that a lot of breeds do. Once again, because they were bred purely for performance. And if you didn't run fast enough, you back in the old days, I guess they put them down. Now they retire them. But, they used to put Great Dane, they said, and I'm not sure. I don't really know anything about Boucherons. I'm not really sure if that's a good, healthy breed. I'd try that. But I think the mindset has to change. If you got a problem in your breed, I know it'd be very expensive to do that, but you know what? These people with Dobermans, at least when I was into it, there's multi-millionaires that spend a fortune on these freaking dogs. And why not spend it on
fixing it? Yeah.
Resurrection project.
The CRISPR, yeah, like they get, yeah.
Yeah, they need to develop a criteria. You have to do hips, and every generation you have to test the dogs that move on to the next generation. If they pass a breed suitability test, like if it's this dog aligns with what a German Shepherd is or what a Doberman is, and then don't introduce those dogs till you got about 4 or 5 generations and you've got a dog that reproduces itself and that's clean of those problems. I think just having an open mind and thinking different, it shouldn't be weird because that's what a breeder has to do to fix it. You're not going to just keep shutting off the gene pool and extracting things. It's not going to happen. And those results of those things are because the gene pool got too shallow, and the way people sorted out stuff, everybody, humans, dogs, cats, everybody has with lethal genes. And if you line up too many lethal genes, you're going to get some lethal condition. So I think of it as your pedigree is like the roots of a tree. You need some shit in there. You need some fertilizer. It can't be pure. It can't eat itself.
A little bullshit make the grass grow.
Gotta have some fertilizer in there.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Vito and I are actually saying the same thing, aren't we? We're saying that you have to create a separate population, tested by selective crossbreeding, clean up the genes, do for at least 5 generations, so it's still mostly Doberman, but now the genes are cleaned up, and then reintroduce back to the general population at large. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, once it's sorted out and it's reproducing true to type and it lives up to the true to type dog.
Right.
I think.
Well, gentlemen, y'all kept this chat busy. I mean, they stayed in here for this one. Let me tell you guys something. This is a interesting topic, and me being the diplomat I am, I like perspective. I love perspective. don't call me an influencer because I'm not an influencer. I like perspective. I look at these two gentlemen. Don't even agree on the same thing totally, but we got so much out of it. I really enjoyed it. But with that said, it ain't gonna stop here because I know they have already agreed on probably doing another show on actually making a dog breed, which I know y'all, the people.
There's a lot to discuss there.
Yeah, it's
and Vito is the expert more than I am.
Yeah. So that was gonna be fun.
Position with these Brazilian dogs. Like I learn something new every day about what they do, but it's it's the same shit everywhere. It is. You get into it after a while, and you start. There's rumors about this dog. There's more American Bulldog, or no, they didn't do this, but nobody has any proof. So that's true. I remember something. A friend of mine, Terry Cornish, he passed away, but he was talking about the Rottweiler and and just different things. And then there's another guy, Tony Scandy. When it comes to the Corso in America and the different things. The hanky-panky that went on and all this stuff like that.
That's the unsanctioned. That's what I described. Yeah. Unsanctioned, right.
They didn't know what they had until they started breeding the dogs. Because the whelping box don't lie. Right. So, but anyway, we're going to continue this different conversation on breeding, types of dogs, pure breeds. Savant Canine is coming. If y'all don't know who Savant is, go to Instagram, follow him. We'll be talking about the lurcher on there because down here in the South, Midwest, Vito know that it's some crosses that people use for functional purposes, Pyrenees crosses and different things like that. But Vito, Alexander, great show, guys. I appreciate it. Guys. All right, we out.
Thank you so much.
Step into the realm of canine wisdom with our podcast, NWA Cane Corsos, where we interview dog men and women from around the globe, discover their talents and insights on breeding, training, nutrition, and the rich history of dogs. Tune in to the most underrated yet influential dog podcast on social media. Your journey into the dog world starts here.